If you've been trying to learn how to play chess, I'll teach you how to play, how to win, and how to maybe even beat some of your friends in just 10 minutes. At the end, I'll teach you an opening that's so simple to play yet so crushing that it might make some of your friends quit. Let's get to it. So first, let's get into how to play. So chess is a game of strategy. In the past, it was used to simulate wars and was a big thing among the rich kids. Well, not anymore obviously, but you get the point. Anyways, nowadays everyone can play chess, and with the rise of popular media depicting chess, everybody wants to learn, but they think it's too hard. To make things simple, we'll break it down into 3 parts: the setup, the rules, and then the gameplay. For starters, chess is played on an 8x8 checkerboard, with the bottom right square always being white. If you'll notice, there's letters on the bottom and there's always numbers on the left. Now, why is this? To put it simply, each row corresponds to a number called a rank, while each column corresponds to a letter called a file. Each square is named by the file and then the rank. For example, this square would be called C2. It's kind of like Battleship, except the game is older than your grandpa. To be fair, he is old as crap. Now pause the video here and try to name each one of these squares. I'm gonna assume that you got them, so let's move on. We've got the board, and we've got the squares done. That's one thing off of our checklist. Next, let's talk about special rules, specifically capturing. Capturing means that you take a piece off of the board and then you move the piece to that square. Each piece captures a little bit differently than the other, but I'll get to that later. Next up is check. So we've got this guy here, the king. The king is the most important piece in chess. You'd think that he's also the most powerful piece in chess, but no. He's super scared of pieces, almost as scared as you trying to ask your crush out. But anyways, the point is still there. Even if one piece looks at the king, everybody has to stop and go help him. Now, there are 3 ways you can help the king get out of check. The first is capturing. If the piece were to mysteriously disappear, then the check would be gone, right? Actually, that sounds like something Stalin would say. Anyway, the next way we can stop a check is to block it. If a piece moves in front of the king, then the check is blocked and there's no longer the check. The final way to block a check is by moving the king. When the king can't get any of the other 2 ways to work, it has to move. Also, when 2 pieces are checking the king at the same time, the king has to move always, but that's for another time. Finally, the last basic idea you need to know is checkmate. When the king can't escape a check, it's called checkmate and the game is over. But yeah, those are some basic concepts you need to know before you start. But what are those pieces? And how do they move? Let's get to that. There are 16 pieces on each side and they're arranged like this. Additionally, there are 6 types of pieces on each side and they move very differently from each other. Let's see how they move. So the first piece we'll start with is the rook. It moves in straight horizontal and vertical lines in any amount of squares it can. It also captures or takes pieces in the same way it moves. Think of it as sort of a heavy unit, as it gains power when there are fewer pieces and can control a whole bunch of squares at once. The bishop is a fairly easy piece as well. Like the rook, it moves in straight lines, except this time on diagonals. Alright, quick side note guys, I forgot that I did not say anything completely about this, but the bishop again is worth 3 points, and also it captures on diagonals as well, just like the rook. Something interesting about the bishop is that once it starts on a color square, it can't change that color for the rest of the game. Sometimes you might hear a bishop being referred to by its color, for example, the dark squared bishop or the light squared bishop. Alright, we're done with the bishop, and now let's go to the queen. Now the queen is super easy since we already learned the rook and the bishop, and it's just a combination of the 2. However, it's worth a whopping 9 points, so be careful. Even though its attacking potential is a lot, it's worth a lot, so if you lose it, it's not gonna be good. The king is a little bit of a special piece, as it can only move 1 square in either direction, but When it moves, it can't be in check. Another special thing is that it can't touch the opposing king, so this would never happen. It's illegal. Why? I don't know. Other than that, it has a special move called castling. Castling is where the king and rook switch places. It's a defensive move, used to shield the king behind pawns to further protect it. The phrase I learned when I learned about castling was 1, 2, over you. I know it's childish, but it works. Trust me. Besides that, we're done with the king. Now, let's move on to the knight. The knight is a little bit tricky to learn as it moves in an L shape. Or backwards L. Whatever. It's the only piece that can jump over other pieces and is the only piece with an unblockable check. Because of this, it makes it useful for crushing tactics like forks, but that's for another time. Finally, let's get to the pawn. The pawn is a pretty cool piece. It protects the king when it's castled, it can mean the difference between winning and losing, and it can also promote, which means that it can become another piece. But what's so special about the pawn is that not about its moves, but rather its special moves. Just as a general guideline, the pawn can only move one square forward and can't move backward. It captures in one square diagonal, like this. Something interesting, however, is that on the first turn that it's moved, it can move forward 2 squares. That's pretty cool. But what's even cooler is a move called en passant. En passant goes like this. When an enemy pawn moves forward 2 squares so that there's a formation kinda like this, it can be captured and the pawn moves diagonally 1 square like it normally would when it captures. One thing I forgot to mention is that when the pawn gets to the end of the board, it can be promoted and it's also worth 1 point. For promotion, it's to any piece you can imagine except for the king. Anyways, that brings us to the end of the pieces. Now, it's a little bit tough to learn at first, but you'll get it. I promise. But what should you study? And how? Well, for starters, I'd recommend studying chess puzzles. They're cool because they help train your tactical awareness. Another thing I would say is to play something like a rapid or a blitz game, and not a bullet game, since those are really too fast for you to learn anything, and really, all they are is just who gets lucky. So really, all it is hard work and persistence that gets you through it. But you came here to crush your friends, right? And I said that I would give you an opening that would be so simple that it would make your friends hate you. Well, here it is. It's called the fried liver. Well, I can't really go over all the lines of the fried liver because that would make this video too long. But if you really want to learn, I'll link one of my studies in the description below. Anyways, that's the end of this video. I hope you like this. Bye!